In the dim glow of her command station, Emily Carter stared at the radar screen aboard the Starblade. The ship was small but advanced, built for exploring distant parts of the galaxy. Her eyes were fixed on a faint blip that had appeared in the distance. It moved slowly, almost hesitantly, among drifting space debris. At first, she thought it might be a piece of rock or some leftover junk from an old spacecraft, but something about the signal didn't feel right. She leaned closer to the screen, squinting as if that would help her see more clearly. The blip wasn't behaving like any asteroid or random object she'd seen before. It had a pattern, a rhythm to its movement, as though it were alive. Or worse, artificial. Her heart began to race. She tapped the comm button beside her chair. "Ryan, can you come up here for a second?" Ryan Lewis, her first officer, arrived within moments. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short brown hair and a calm demeanor that often helped keep the crew steady during tense situations. He glanced at the radar screen and frowned. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the blip. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "It's not matching anything in our database. And look at the signature. It's strange." Ryan studied the readings carefully. His brow furrowed deeper. "You're right. This doesn't look like alien tech or even one of those drifter ships we sometimes run into. It's too simple." "Simple?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, like it's old. Primitive, even." Emily felt a chill creep down her spine. Primitive technology wasn't unheard of, but this far out in deep space, that was unusual. Most civilizations they encountered either used advanced tools or nothing at all. There weren't many species still stuck in the early stages of development, unless... Her mind drifted back to stories she'd heard as a child. Legends passed down through generations. Tales of humans, ancient beings who once ruled a blue planet called Earth. According to the myths, they were clever but reckless, destroying their home until it could no longer support life. Eventually, they vanished, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. Some said they died out completely. Others claimed they fled to other worlds. Either way, no one had seen or heard from them in centuries. Could this blip belong to one of their ships? "It can't be," Ryan said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Humans are just stories, old tales people tell when they want to scare each other." "Maybe," Emily replied, but her voice lacked conviction. The blip grew stronger as the Starblade moved closer. Whatever it wasn't moving away. In fact, it seemed almost stationary now, floating aimlessly in the void. Emily made a decision. "Bring us nearer," she ordered. "Let's get a visual." Ryan hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't know what we're dealing with." "No, we don't," Emily agreed. "But if there's even a chance this is real, if this is evidence of humans surviving out here, we owe it to ourselves to find out." Ryan sighed but nodded. He trusted Emily's judgment, even when it led them into uncharted territory. Slowly, the Starblade approached the mysterious object. As they got closer, the shape became clearer. It wasn't sleek or polished like most modern vessels. Instead, its surface was rough and battered, covered in patches and scorch marks. And then Emily saw it, the letters painted on the side, faded but unmistakable. SS Voyager. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to Ryan, wide-eyed. "That's human writing," she whispered. Ryan stared at the screen, his face pale. For once, he had no words. In the dim glow of her command station, Emily Carter stared at the radar screen aboard the Starblade. The ship was small but advanced, built for exploring distant parts of the galaxy. Her eyes were fixed on a faint blip that had appeared in the distance. It moved slowly, almost hesitantly, among drifting space debris. At first, she thought it might be a piece of rock or some leftover junk from an old spacecraft, but something about the signal didn't feel right. She leaned closer to the screen, squinting as if that would help her see more clearly. The blip wasn't behaving like any asteroid or random object she'd seen before. It had a pattern, a rhythm to its movement as though it were alive. Or worse, artificial. Her heart began to race. She tapped the comm button beside her chair. "Ryan, can you come up here for a second?" Ryan Lewis, her first officer, arrived within moments. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short brown hair and a calm demeanor that often helped keep the crew steady during tense situations. He glanced at the radar screen and frowned. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the blip. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "It's not matching anything in our database. And look at the signature. It's strange." Ryan studied the readings carefully. His brow furrowed deeper. "You're right. This doesn't look like alien tech or even one of those drifter ships we sometimes run into. It's too simple." "Simple?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, like it's old, primitive, even." Emily felt a chill creep down her spine. Primitive technology wasn't unheard of, but this far out in deep space, that was unusual. Most civilizations they encountered either used advanced tools or nothing at all. There weren't many species still stuck in the early stages of development. Unless her mind drifted back to stories she'd heard as a child. Legends passed down through generations, tales of humans, ancient beings who once ruled a blue planet called Earth. According to the myths, they were clever but reckless, destroying their home until it could no longer support life. Eventually, they vanished, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. Some said they died out completely. Others claimed they fled to other worlds. Either way, no one had seen or heard from them in centuries. Could this blip belong to one of their ships? "It can't be," Ryan said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Humans are just stories, old tales people tell when they want to scare each other." "Maybe," Emily replied, but her voice lacked conviction. The blip grew stronger as the star blade moved closer. Whatever it wasn't moving away. In fact, it seemed almost stationary now, floating aimlessly in the void. Emily made a decision. "Bring us nearer," she ordered. "Let's get a visual." Ryan hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't know what we're dealing with." "No, we don't," Emily agreed. "But if there's even a chance this is real, if this is evidence of humans surviving out here, we owe it to ourselves to find out." Ryan sighed but nodded. He trusted Emily's judgment, even when it led them into uncharted territory. Slowly, the Starblade approached the mysterious object. As they got closer, the shape became clearer. It wasn't sleek or polished like most modern vessels. Instead, its surface was rough and battered, covered in patches and scorch marks. And then Emily saw it, the letters painted on the side. Faded but unmistakable. SS Voyager. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to Ryan, wide-eyed. "That's human writing," she whispered. Ryan stared at the screen, his face pale. For once, he had no words. The Starblade moved cautiously through the silent expanse of space, its engines humming softly as it approached the mysterious ship. Emily stood on the bridge, her eyes glued to the main view screen. The battered vessel grew larger with each passing moment, its surface scarred by time and countless collisions. It looked like it had been through hell, and somehow survived. "Still no response to our hails," Daniel reported from his station. His fingers flew over the controls as he tried every frequency he could think of. Static crackled through the speakers, filling the room with an eerie silence when it stopped. Whatever this thing is, it's either ignoring us or can't hear us. Emily frowned but didn't respond. She was too busy studying the ship. Its design was crude compared to the sleek, advanced vessels they were used to seeing. There were no glowing panels or intricate patterns, just dull metal plates held together by what looked like makeshift welding. Despite its rough appearance, though, there was something hauntingly familiar about it. Ryan stepped up beside her, his arms crossed. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "Even if it's human, and I'm not saying it is, how did it end up way out here? Humans haven't been seen in centuries. Why would one of their ships still be floating around?" I don't know, Emily admitted, but we're going to find out. She gave the order to send a boarding party. Alongside Ryan, Amanda volunteered to join them, her excitement outweighing her caution. They suited up quickly, strapping on protective gear in case the air inside the alien craft was toxic, or worse. Armed with scanners and tools, the trio left the safety of the Starblade and crossed the void to the mysterious ship. The airlock hissed open as they docked, revealing the dark corridor beyond. The interior was cold and lifeless, lit only by the faint glow of their helmet lights. Dust coated every surface, and the walls were lined with pipes and wires that seemed hastily installed. It smelled stale, like a place long abandoned. "This isn't right," Ryan said quietly, his voice echoing in his helmet. "It looks like someone patched this thing together just to keep it running. No wonder it's falling apart." Amanda knelt to examine a panel bolted to the wall. Her gloved fingers traced over faded symbols etched into the metal. "Look at this," she said, pointing. "These are numbers. Dates, maybe. And—" She paused, tilting her head. "Is that handwriting?" Emily leaned closer, squinting at the markings. Sure enough, they weren't machine-made. Someone had written them by hand, scrawling notes and calculations in jagged lines. "Whoever was here didn't rely on computers for everything," she murmured. They moved deeper into the ship, their footsteps muffled against the rusted floor. The further they went, the more personal the details became. Empty food packets floated in zero gravity, along with tattered books and loose papers. In one corner, they found a makeshift memorial, a cluster of photographs taped to the wall, showing smiling faces frozen in time. "These people lived here," Amanda whispered. "For years, maybe decades, they made a home out of this wreck." Suddenly, a weak groan echoed down the corridor. The team froze, their lights swinging toward the sound. At the far end of the hall, a figure stirred feebly on the ground. He was old, his face gaunt and pale beneath a thin layer of grime. His clothes were ragged, and he clutched a tattered journal to his chest, like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Emily stepped forward slowly, her voice gentle. "Hello. Can you hear me?" The man blinked, his cloudy eyes struggling to focus. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse and barely audible. "Help," he rasped. "Please." Ryan exchanged a wary glance with Emily, but stayed silent. Amanda crouched beside the man, scanning him with her medical device. "He's alive," she confirmed, "but barely. We need to get him back to the Starblade." As they carefully lifted the frail survivor, Emily noticed something tucked under his arm, a faded photograph of a blue planet surrounded by clouds. Earth. The sight sent a shiver down her spine. Whoever this man was, he carried pieces of humanity's past with him, and possibly its future. Back aboard the Starblade, the crew worked quickly to stabilize the frail man they had found on the mysterious ship. He was laid on a medical bed in the infirmary, his breathing shallow but steady. Amanda hovered over him, attaching monitors and running tests to assess his condition. Despite his weakened state, there was a spark of life in his eyes, a flicker of hope that hadn't been extinguished, even after so many years alone in the void. Emily stood nearby, watching silently as Amanda worked. The man's skin was pale and lined with wrinkles, evidence of decades spent in harsh conditions. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the tattered journal to his chest, refusing to let it go even as Amanda tried to examine him. "Can you tell us your name?" Emily asked gently, leaning closer so he could see her face. The man blinked slowly, his gaze drifting between her and the others in the room. It took him a moment to find his voice, but when he spoke, his words were soft yet clear. "William Harper," he rasped. I thought I'd never see another soul again." Emily exchanged a glance with Ryan, who stood by the door, arms crossed. She turned back to William. "We're here now, Mr. Harper. You're safe." William nodded weakly, though his expression remained distant, as if he were still trying to process what was happening. After a long pause, he began to speak, his voice trembling with emotion. "We left Earth so long ago. My people, we thought we could find a new home. But the ship broke down, and we drifted. Years passed. Decades. One by one. His voice cracked, and he closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. Amanda placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to say more right now," she said softly. "Rest. We'll help you." But William shook his head, gripping the journal tighter. "No, you need to know. They trusted me to keep their story alive." Over the next hour, William recounted fragments of his journey. He spoke of Earth, a planet once vibrant with life, filled with blue skies, green forests, and endless oceans. He described towering cities buzzing with activity, music spilling from open windows, and laughter echoing through streets. To Emily and her crew, these images sounded like scenes from a dream. Earth had long since become a barren wasteland, its beauty erased by centuries of neglect and destruction. They didn't give up. William continued, his voice growing stronger despite his frailty. Even when things got bad, when the air turned toxic and the seas dried up, they kept fighting. Some stayed behind, trying to rebuild. Others, like us, left, hoping we'd find somewhere better. He opened the journal, carefully turning its brittle pages. Inside were sketches of Earth's landscapes, detailed maps of star systems, and notes written in cramped handwriting. "This is everything we learned," he said. "Our course, our hopes, our failures. If nothing else, let this be remembered." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. This wasn't just a relic of humanity. It was proof that they had fought until the very end. Ryan, however, remained skeptical. As the group gathered later to discuss their next steps, he voiced his concerns. "Even if this is real, and I'm not convinced, we can't just drag an ancient ship full of unknown risks back to Federation space. What if it's carrying diseases? Or worse, some kind of tech we don't understand?" Amanda frowned. "You're being paranoid. This isn't about risks. It's about preserving history. These people sacrificed everything for a chance to survive. How can we turn our backs on that?" Emily listened quietly, weighing both sides. Finally, she spoke. "We'll tow the SS Voyager back with us," she decided. "But we'll take precautions. Quarantine protocols will be in place, and we'll scan every inch of that ship before bringing it anywhere near populated areas." Ryan sighed but didn't argue further. Deep down, he knew Emily had made up her mind. And as much as he hated to admit it, part of him wanted to believe in the legend too. As the meeting ended, Emily returned to the infirmary to check on William. He was asleep now, his chest rising and falling steadily. The journal lay open beside him, its pages whispering secrets of a world lost to time. For the first time in years, Emily allowed herself to hope. Maybe humanity wasn't gone after all. The next morning, Emily gathered her senior crew in the briefing room to discuss the growing tension aboard the Starblade. News of the SS Voyager and its sole survivor, William Harper, had spread quickly among the crew. Opinions were divided, and whispers filled the corridors. Some believed they were part of something historic, a chance to rewrite humanity's story. Others saw only danger, convinced that bringing an ancient, unknown ship into Federation space was reckless. Amanda sat at the table, her face flushed with determination. "We can't just leave the SS Voyager behind," she argued. "It's a piece of history, a relic of humanity's past. If we don't preserve it, everything William's people fought for will be lost forever." Ryan leaned forward, his tone sharp. "And what happens if dragging that thing back causes problems? We don't know what kind of tech or diseases are lurking inside. What if we bring something dangerous into our own territory?" Daniel, the communications officer, nodded hesitantly. "Ryan's got a point. Even if we scan the ship, there's no guarantee we'll catch everything. Some things might not show up on sensors until it's too late." Emily listened carefully, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. She understood both sides. On one hand, Amanda's passion for preserving humanity's legacy was hard to ignore. The journal William carried was already proving invaluable, offering glimpses into Earth's final days and the struggles of those who try to escape. But Ryan's concerns weren't without merit. The risks were real, and as captain, she couldn't afford to overlook them. Finally, she spoke. "I hear all of you," she said firmly. "But we owe it to William, and to ourselves, to protect what's left of his people's story. We'll tow the SS Voyager back to Federation space, but we'll do it safely. Every system on that ship will be scanned multiple times before we even think about unsealing it. And if anything looks suspicious, we stop immediately." Ryan sighed, clearly unhappy but unwilling to push further. Amanda smiled faintly, relief washing over her face. The decision was made. But Emily knew the challenges were far from over. Later that day, the crew began preparing the SS Voyager for transport. Amanda spent hours poring over William's journal, trying to piece together more details about the ship's systems and its journey. Meanwhile, Daniel worked tirelessly to establish a secure connection between the two vessels, ensuring the SS Voyager could be towed without drifting off course. William, though still weak, insisted on helping. He sat in the infirmary with Emily, pointing out key sections of the journal and explaining how the ship functioned. "The engines are old," he admitted. "They haven't been reliable for years. But the core, it should hold long enough to get you where you need to go." Emily studied him closely. Despite his frail appearance, there was a quiet strength in his voice, a resilience that reminded her of the stories he told. These were people who refused to give up, even when hope seemed impossible. As the preparations continued, strange occurrences began to unsettle the crew. Systems aboard the Starblade started malfunctioning, lights flickered, doors opened and closed on their own, and temperature readings fluctuated wildly. At first, everyone assumed it was stress or coincidence. But when Daniel fell ill after inspecting the tow cables connecting the two ships, panic began to ripple through the ranks. "He's running a fever," Amanda reported after examining him. "His symptoms don't match anything in our medical database. It's like his body is fighting something we can't detect." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She turned to Ryan, who stood nearby, his expression grim. "Could it be coming from the SS Voyager?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Ryan replied, "but I'm starting to think this whole mission is cursed." Despite the growing unease, Emily refused to abandon the plan. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she was determined to see it through. Humanity's story deserved to be told, even if it came at a cost. The unease aboard the Starblade grew with each passing hour. Daniel's condition worsened, his fever spiking despite Amanda's best efforts to treat him. He drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering incoherently about shadows moving in the corners of his vision. The crew began to whisper among themselves, their fears spreading like a contagion. Emily called an emergency meeting in the briefing room, her expression grim. "We need answers," she said, her voice firm, but tinged with worry. "Whatever is happening, it started after we brought the SS Voyager on board. We can't ignore the connection." Ryan leaned forward, his face pale. "I warned you this was a bad idea," he said sharply. "Now we've got a sick crew member and a ship full of unknown risks. How much more proof do we need that this thing is dangerous?" Amanda shot him a glare. "We can't just abandon William or the SS Voyager. There's still so much we don't understand. If we give up now, we're turning our backs on humanity's legacy, and maybe even a chance to save Daniel." Emily raised a hand to silence them. "Arguing won't help," she said. "What we need is a plan. Amanda, I want you to focus on Daniel. Find out what's wrong with him. Run every test you can think of. Ryan, I need you to lead a team back to the SS Voyager. Check for anything unusual, energy readings, hidden compartments, anything that might explain what's going on." Ryan hesitated but nodded reluctantly. He didn't like the idea of returning to the mysterious ship, but he knew Emily was right. They couldn't solve the problem without more information. With the meeting adjourned, Ryan gathered a small team and prepared to board the SS Voyager once again. Armed with scanners and protective gear, they crossed the airlock, their footsteps echoing in the dark, silent corridors. The ship felt different this time, heavier, as if it carried secrets too dangerous to reveal. As they moved deeper inside, Ryan's scanner picked up faint energy signals emanating from one of the lower decks. "This way," he whispered, motioning for the others to follow. They reached a sealed door at the end of a narrow hallway. It was old and rusted, its surface covered in strange symbols etched into the metal. Ryan frowned. "This wasn't on any of the schematics William showed us," he muttered. One of the crew members, a young engineer named Chris, stepped forward. "Let me try to open it," he said, pulling out a handheld tool. After a few moments of tinkering, the door groaned and slid open, revealing a dimly lit chamber beyond. Inside, the walls were lined with strange pods, glass cylinders filled with a glowing green liquid. Suspended within the fluid were shadowy figures, humanoid but distorted, their faces obscured by tendrils of darkness. "What are those?" Chris stammered, his voice trembling. Ryan stared, his heart pounding. "Experiments," he said finally. "William mentioned tests to adapt humans to extreme environments. These must be the results." Before anyone could react, the pods began to hum softly, the liquid inside swirling violently. One by one, the figures stirred, their eyes snapping open to reveal glowing, unnatural light. "We need to get out of here," Ryan shouted, backing away. But it was too late. The pods hissed as they began to crack open, spilling their contents onto the floor. Whatever they had awakened was no longer contained. Back aboard the Starblade, Emily felt a sudden wave of dread. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her gut. She turned to Amanda, who stood nearby. "Get ready," she said quietly. "We might not have much time left." Unbeknownst to them, the danger they had feared most was already closer than they realized. The hybrids were awake, and they were coming. The Starblade trembled as strange vibrations rippled through its hull. Emily gripped the edge of her command chair, her eyes darting between the monitors and the crew. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The ship's systems flickered erratically, and alarms blared in short, panicked bursts. "Report," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Daniel, still weak but awake, sat at his station, his fingers trembling over the controls. "We're picking up movement. Inside the SS Voyager," he said hoarsely. "Energy spikes are off the charts." Ryan's voice crackled over the comlink. He sounded breathless, his words rushed. "Captain, we found something down here. Something bad. The pods, they're opening. We need to get out now." Emily's stomach tightened. She didn't need to ask what he meant. Whatever had been sealed away in those pods was loose, and it wasn't friendly. "Seal off the docking bay," she ordered sharply. "Cut all connections to the SS Voyager. I want that ship isolated immediately." Amanda, standing nearby, shook her head urgently. "Wait, William is still over there with them. If we cut the connection, we'll strand him." Emily hesitated, torn between protecting her crew and saving the man who had trusted them. Before she could decide, Ryan's voice came through again, this time calmer but strained. "We've got him. We're heading back to the airlock now. Just do it, Captain. Seal it as soon as we're clear." Moments later, Ryan and his team burst onto the bridge, dragging William with them. His face was pale, his body shaking as if he'd seen a ghost. "I tried to warn you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They weren't supposed to wake up, not yet." Before anyone could question him further, the lights dimmed, plunging the room into near darkness. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. On the main view screen, the SS Voyager loomed ominously, its battered exterior glowing faintly with an unnatural light. "They're trying to breach us," Daniel said, his voice rising in panic. "Something's overriding our systems. Emily acted quickly. Divert all power to the shields. Prepare for impact. The ship shuddered violently as the SS Voyager launched some kind of energy pulse. Sparks flew from consoles, and several crew members stumbled, struggling to stay on their feet. Amanda clutched the back of a chair, her eyes wide with fear. "What are they?" she asked no one in particular. William sank into a seat, his hands gripping the arms tightly. "Hybrids," he muttered. "Human, but not entirely. Experiments gone wrong. They were supposed to help us survive. But they changed, became something else." Ryan stepped closer to Emily, his jaw clenched. "We can't fight them," he said firmly. "Not like this. Our weapons aren't designed for whatever they are." Emily nodded grimly. She knew he was right. The hybrids were too powerful, their technology far beyond anything the crew had encountered before. But abandoning the mission wasn't an option either, not while they posed a threat to the galaxy. "We need to destroy the SS Voyager," she said finally, her voice heavy with regret. The room fell silent. Amanda stared at her, horrified. "You can't mean that. All the history, everything we've learned, it'll be lost forever." "I don't like it any more than you do," Emily replied. "But we have no choice. If those things escape, they'll spread. We can't let that happen." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure it counts." With heavy hearts, the crew prepared to detach the SS Voyager and send it toward a nearby sun. As William watched silently, tears streaming down his face, Emily gave the order. The Starblade released its grip on the ancient ship, letting it drift away. Seconds later, the hybrids breached the SS Voyager's hull, their glowing forms visible through the windows. They moved with terrifying speed, searching for a way to escape. But it was too late. The ship was already caught in the sun's gravity well, pulled inexorably toward its fiery demise. As flames consumed the SS Voyager, Emily stood quietly on the observation deck, mourning the loss of a civilization she'd barely begun to understand. Ryan joined her, offering quiet support. For the first time, they agreed on something. Humanity deserved better than extinction. Weeks passed after the destruction of the SS Voyager, but the weight of what they had done lingered heavily on the crew of the Starblade. Emily spent long hours alone in her quarters, staring at William's journal. Its pages were worn and brittle, filled with sketches, notes, and fragments of a world that no longer existed. She couldn't bring herself to stop reading it. Every line felt like a thread connecting her to humanity's lost past, a reminder of both their brilliance and their fragility. William, though physically recovering, seemed hollow. He rarely spoke unless asked a direct question, and even then, his answers were short and distant. He spent most of his time gazing out of the observation windows, watching the endless expanse of stars. Emily often found him there, sitting quietly with the journal clutched in his hands. It was as if he feared letting go would erase the last traces of his people forever. One evening, Emily approached him cautiously. "William," she said softly, taking a seat beside him, "I know this isn't easy for you. Losing the SS Voyager, it must feel like losing everything all over again." He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the stars. "It wasn't just a ship," he murmured. "It was home. The only piece of Earth we had left. Everything we were. Everything we hoped to be. It was inside those walls." Emily hesitated before responding. "We didn't have a choice. Those hybrids, they were too dangerous. If we'd let them escape, they could have hurt countless others." "I know," William replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's what makes it so hard. I wanted to save them, to keep their story alive. But maybe some stories aren't meant to survive." His words struck a chord deep within Emily. She thought about the sacrifices William's people had made, their desperate attempts to adapt, to endure, to cling to life even when hope seemed impossible. And yet, in the end, their experiments had led to something monstrous. Was survival worth such a cost? The next day, Emily called another meeting with her senior crew. This time, the mood was somber but focused. They had reached Federation space, and scholars were already preparing to study William's journal and the data collected from the SS Voyager. Amanda sat at the table, her usual enthusiasm tempered by the gravity of recent events. Ryan stood near the door, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "We need to decide how to present this," Emily began. "What happened out there? It's not just history. It's a warning. Humanity pushed itself to the brink, and when they tried to rebuild, they created something darker than they ever imagined." The memorial ceremony aboard the Starblade was a quiet affair, marked by moments of reflection rather than speeches. Emily stood at the center of the gathering, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Around her, the crew listened intently, their faces solemn as they processed all they had witnessed. For many, it was the first time they truly understood the weight of what had happened and what they had lost. "We found something extraordinary," Emily began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Something that reminded us of where we come from and how far we've come. Humanity wasn't just a legend. They were real. They dreamed, they fought, and they endured against unimaginable odds." She paused, glancing down at William's journal, which lay open on a small podium beside her. "But they also made mistakes. Mistakes born out of fear and desperation, and those mistakes cost them dearly." William sat in the front row, his frail frame leaning heavily on a cane. His eyes were fixed on the floor, but his hands trembled slightly as they rested on his lap. He didn't speak during the ceremony, but his presence said enough. He was the last living link to a world that no longer existed, a world that had burned itself out in its quest for survival. Amanda stepped forward after Emily finished speaking, holding up a small device. It was a recording module containing translations of William's journal entries, along with scans of the SS Voyager's systems and data collected during their mission. "This is more than history," she said softly. "It's a lesson, a reminder of what happens when we lose sight of who we are. But it's also proof that even in the darkest times, hope can still exist, if we choose to carry it." The crew nodded silently, their expressions thoughtful. Some wiped away tears, while others simply stared ahead, lost in their own thoughts. Ryan lingered near the back of the room, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He hadn't been eager to participate in the ceremony, but he stayed nonetheless, listening closely to every word. Afterward, as the crew dispersed, Emily approached William. He looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped as if carrying an invisible burden. She knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. He managed a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'll be fine," he said. I wish I could have done more for them, for everyone who came before me." "You did everything you could," Emily replied firmly. "You kept their story alive." "That's not nothing. It's everything." William sighed, gazing out the observation window at the endless sea of stars. "Do you think anyone will believe us about what really happened?" Emily hesitated before answering. "Some will doubt it. Others might try to twist the truth to fit their own agendas. But the important thing is that we know. And because of that, humanity's legacy won't disappear, not completely." Later that evening, Ryan joined Emily on the bridge. The ship was quiet now, its corridors empty as the crew settled into their quarters for the night. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the vast expanse of space. "Do you think we made the right call?" he asked after a long silence. "About destroying the SS Voyager," Emily clarified. When Ryan nodded, she exhaled slowly. "It wasn't easy, but yeah, I think so. If we let those hybrids escape, they could have caused untold damage. Sometimes doing the right thing means making sacrifices, even ones that hurt." Ryan frowned, his gaze distant. "Still feels like we failed somehow. Like we should have found another way." "Maybe," Emily admitted, "but failure isn't the end. It's part of learning. We'll take what we learned from this and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's the best we can do." As the two of them stood side by side, watching the stars drift past, a sense of quiet resolve settled over the Starblade. They had faced the unknown and emerged changed, but not broken. The galaxy was still vast and full of mysteries, but they now carried a deeper understanding of the cost of survival. And perhaps, in remembering humanity's story, they would find a way to honor it without repeating its mistakes. The Starblade continued its journey through the stars, but life aboard the ship had changed. The discovery of the SS Voyager and the loss of William's people lingered in the minds of the crew, shaping their thoughts and actions in ways they hadn't expected. Emily noticed it most during routine tasks, how conversations had grown quieter, how laughter seemed harder to come by. Yet she also saw signs of resilience. Her crew was stronger for having faced the unknown together, even if it had come at a cost. William spent much of his time alone, though he occasionally joined Amanda in the science lab. Together, they worked to preserve the data collected from the SS Voyager, ensuring that every detail, every fragment of humanity's story, was carefully documented. Amanda often found herself marveling at the ingenuity of those who had built the ship. "They were so resourceful," she said one day, holding up a schematic of the SS Voyager's engine core. "Even with limited tools and materials, they managed to keep it running for decades." William nodded, his eyes distant. "They didn't have a choice," he replied softly. "Survival forced them to be creative, but creativity has limits and consequences." Amanda hesitated, unsure how to respond. She wanted to offer comfort, but she knew there were no words that could ease the weight of his memories. Instead, she focused on her work, determined to honor the legacy of those who had come before them. Meanwhile, Ryan began to soften his stance on humanity's place in the galaxy. Though he still harbored doubts about the risks they had taken, he couldn't deny the impact their discovery had made. During late-night shifts on the bridge, he would sometimes ask Emily questions about Earth, what it might have looked like, how its people lived, why they had fallen so far. Emily answered as best she could, drawing from William's journal and the stories he had shared. "It's strange," Ryan admitted one evening. "I always thought humans were just myths, stories told to make us feel less alone in the universe. But now," he trailed off, shaking his head, "now I realize how real they were, and how fragile hope can be." Emily smiled faintly. "Hope is what keeps us moving forward," she said. "Even when things seem impossible, it reminds us that there's always a chance for something better." As the weeks turned into months, the Federation released an official report on the Starblade's mission. Scholars debated the findings, some dismissing the story of the SS Voyager as exaggerated or fabricated. Others, however, embraced it as a turning point, a reminder of humanity's enduring spirit and the dangers of unchecked ambition. For Emily and her crew, the reactions mattered less than the truth they carried within themselves. They had seen the echoes of a lost civilization and felt the weight of its struggles. In doing so, they had gained a deeper appreciation for the fragility of life and the importance of preserving it. One night, as the Starblade drifted silently through space, Emily stood on the observation deck alone. The stars stretched endlessly before her, each one a beacon of possibility. She thought about William's people, their dreams, their failures, their sacrifices. Though their journey had ended in tragedy, their story wasn't over. It lived on in the hearts of those who remembered them. Behind her, the door slid open, and William stepped inside. He moved slowly, leaning on his cane, but his expression was calm. "May I join you?" he asked quietly. "Of course," Emily replied, stepping aside to make room. They stood together in silence, watching the galaxy unfold before them. After a while, William spoke. "Do you think we'll ever find another Earth? Another place where humanity can start over?" Emily considered the question carefully. "Maybe," she said finally. "But I think it's more important to focus on protecting what we have now, to remember the lessons of the past and build something better for the future. William nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "You're right," he said. "Perhaps that's the greatest legacy we can leave behind, not just survival, but hope." As they gazed out at the stars, the vastness of space no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, it seemed full of promise, a canvas waiting for new stories to be written. And though humanity's voice had grown faint, its echoes would guide them forward, reminding them of where they had been and where they could go next.